Serious, what is your most scariest outdoor experience? I was out in the middle of nowhere, was standing on the edge of a forest bordering a road, and a fields and forest was all that was around for miles and miles. This was the country, small houses here and there, but mainly plains and forest. I was out to look at the night sky in an area with no lights around. I was alone, it was the middle of winter, but I had brought a telescope with me. Was standing around and saw a small light through the trees and forest in front of me, and it was eerily coming toward me low in the sky, becoming larger and larger until becoming scary big giant. This was brighter than anything I've seen, and it had me in awe. As I watched this thing, I kept expecting it to become an airplane or resolve into some normal thing that I could process normally. Instead, it just kept getting closer and closer, silently, growing brighter and larger as it came toward me through the trees. It wasn't moving like a plane and I got scared. It was pretty far from the nearest major airport, so there would be no reason for landing lights or low-flying passenger airliners. Anyway, I honestly felt like one of the subjects of an X-Files episode. It was just like you'd see on a good sci-fi movie or TV show, some eerily bright white light coming towards someone out in the middle of nowhere shining through the trees on a quiet night with no one else around. As this light got closer, I became seriously frightened. Like, oh snap, maybe all that alien stuff is actually true and they're actually coming towards me, and I'm out alone in the middle of nowhere, so I just thought, yup, flurbo this, I'm not sticking around to see how this turns out. So I ran away, grabbed my stuff and made my way to my car, drove home that same night, and I've never gone back out to that area since then. It was really a scary thing because suddenly the sci-fi movies you see became real for a moment. That was the feeling, oh flurbo, things cray, I'm leaving here right now. I don't spook easily, normally I would have just thought this was cool, but it seemed so much like a scary movie happening in real life that I just had to book it. Probably one of the most nerve-wracking things I've experienced while camping happened to me while I was in the Boy Scouts. My troop had hiked for an entire day into the mountains, following an incredibly old and vague hunting trail. After at least 6 hours of hiking, we're finally getting close to our spot, which to be fair, was an incredibly beautiful valley tucked in the Rockies, with a gentle crystal-clear river maybe a quarter-mile wide, but only a few inches deep. But about a mile before we reach the stopping point, we start seeing skulls. To be fair, they were all deer or elk, but still, seeing at least 24 skulls scattered around the area, some strung up in trees in various states of decomposition, isn't a pretty picture. So as nervous as the other scouts and I, and a couple of the adults were, we forged on, collected a couple racks of antlers and made it to the camp. After making camp, setting up for and cooking dinner, we all had pretty much forgotten about the skulls. So it starts getting dark, we clean up for the night and all get into our tents, and eventually everyone falls asleep. Except me. I've always suffered from insomnia, so I usually stay up late and read, especially when camping. So I was the first to hear the screaming. It was a bone-chilling, absolute scary screaming, and though I had never heard it before or since then, I knew to the depths of my soul that it was a mountain lion, and not only had we probably camped on its feeding grounds, but it also saw our camp and was pissed. Can't get any worse, right? Wrong. By this time, everyone had woken up, and all the scout masters yelled for us to stay in our tents, of course, when all of a sudden, we heard another one starting to scream as well, also on the other side of the river. There's nothing as terrifying as hearing that screaming, knowing how close these extremely dangerous and most likely pissed predators were, but not being able to see them. For whatever reason, they never crossed the river, but they kept on screaming, on and off, until dawn. After getting out of our tents and having a quick breakfast, we packed up in record time and left. I still have the antler I grabbed as we marched out, sitting on my dresser at home. This was while driving to my campsite deep in the Allegheny forest. There's a stretch of road about 70 miles long that's just hills, mountains, forest. It was a pitch black night, as clear a sky as I've ever seen. On my way up a mountain was when I saw it. Still don't know if it was a trick of the light, my eyes failing me, or something real, but it freaked me right the fleab out. It was a black mass, about 8 or 9 feet tall. It did not appear to have legs, as if it were floating. I saw it briefly before it darted into the trees, faster than an animal or human could move. Yeah, I kept on driving right the heck out of there. I was biking around in the Sierra Nevada when I stopped to take a water break on one of those areas of the road where you see signs like, next gas in 60 miles. I'm sitting on a little part of the shoulder overlooking a valley with a couple of really impressive peaks across it from me, maybe a half-mile in width. I'm watching these peaks, and suddenly I notice something moving along the opposite ridge of this valley about halfway up a peak. It's vaguely human-looking and doesn't appear to be that big from this distance. It stops almost parallel to me, and I get the creepy feeling that it's watching me. After about a minute, it continues on its way for another 80 feet before climbing up the side of this mountain. This is when I get actually scared, as the sides of these mountains are way too steep to be climbing without gear and as quickly as whatever that thing was. I hop on my bike and speed out of there, not stopping until I reach my campsite. Upon reviewing maps of the area, I also found out that there are no trails to those mountains as well, with the only logical way up to the ridge that whatever that thing was on would be to hike across this valley to almost cliff-like slopes and then climb up. I don't believe in Bigfoot or anything like that, but to this day, I have no idea what that thing was, besides maybe an adrenaline junkie seeking a thrill. I also thought that it could have been a cougar, but it seemed significantly bigger than one, even at the range I was at, as well as the thing I saw seeming to have a bipedal gait. This was on my parents' property a couple years ago. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go on a short hike at about midnight. I was walking down a beaten path with my rifle-mounted flashlight pointed forwards. It was really misty. I could see silhouettes of trees, but nothing detailed. I got to my uncle's one-room cabin about a quarter mile from my house and took a seat on his picnic table. After sitting there for a while, I got up. I turned to my right and took about 5 steps into the grass. I pointed my flashlight and into the mist, and I could see 2 yellow predator eyes glowing at about stomach level. Not 10 feet away from me. I stood there for at least 5 long minutes just looking into its eyes with my rifle pointed right between them. It didn't move or make a sound. Just blinking every couple seconds. I stared back silently while trying to keep my composure. All at once, the eyes were gone. I walked forward to where it must have been standing and I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. No rustle of grass, no twig breaking, no dent in the ground. It was just gone. I ended up walking back home after that. I never did see its body, just its floating eyes. Went to Job Corps in Kentucky, smack in the middle of Mammoth Cave National Park. Beautiful area. We weren't supposed to leave the campus, but no one followed that rule. We'd have organized hikes and stuff that the park rangers told us not to do. One day, we get a bit turned around, and it's close to 10 p.m. by the time we realized where we are and decide to head back. Expecting to get chewed out since lights out would be in effect and the doors would be locked, so we're screwed already in regards to getting back on time. We decide to take a leisurely pace. We're about 100 or so feet from the edge of the woods when we hear a baby crying. Some of us wanted to go check it out, but the guy who was leading us around told us to shut up and listen. Said it sounded funny. It kept repeating. The exact same cry each time. It was like a soundbite being looped. Then it got a lot closer, and we all heard what sounded like a woman screaming her life out. We all noped the heck out of that situation as fast as we could. I've got a good through hiking crew. We've done pieces of the some Florida swamp and a good amount in Maine. We consider ourselves pretty experienced. 2 of us are military, the other 2 are just fun to have around. So with that said, we emphasize preparation. This was probably 2015. We planned a 10-day trip in West Virginia along a river the week after Christmas. This is our favorite time to camp because 1, we're all home, 2, bugs ain't around, and 3, no one else is stupid enough to camp that time of year. We've done the trail before and felt comfortable with the forecast, highs in the low 30s, lows in the teens, nothing we couldn't handle. We set off. Weather is great. The trail we're on is a 26-mile loop hand railing a river most of the way. We eventually get to the spot we mapped out on the second day about 14 miles in and get ready to chill and do man stuff for the week. We rock out in the woods doing the usual for us, cutting wood, hopping in the river, hunting, fishing, riding, etc. Now we've been out there before and had explored maybe a 3x3 grid square radius and we didn't see, hear or sense the presence of anyone else out there. Things start to get gnarly. I'll get into the paranormal first. It's 5 a.m. and we start getting into our morning routine. One guy heads down the 10 meters to the river to catch breakfast, one starts checking the NOAA forecast on our radio, one starts to unfreeze our water filter, and I'm pulling out the morning's firewood. I'm restarting our fire, and as it gets brighter, I notice there's this gorgeous pair of black labs rummaging around the outskirts of our camp. Pleasantly surprised, we are all pumped to find some pups. Because we're idiots, none of us care where they came from. Within seconds, this raggedy-looking West Virginia guy appears out of nowhere by a tree. Shotgun over the shoulder, sweet jean jacket on, and a cowboy hat, the good West Virginia look that I respect. He says, "Nice morning for a fire, eh?" The way he said it was chilling, we all felt like we could see right through him. We asked him how he got out here, mind you, the sun is barely peeking through the woods, we're 14 miles in nowhere forest, NPS, and we haven't seen a trace of anyone in 5 days. The man says nothing, looks at us and turns to walk out into the dawn, dogs following him. We're standing there dumbfounded, and when we find our pulse, we immediately start looking from where he came from and which direction he was headed. Obviously, we found nothing. No tracks, not even from the dogs.